Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you're joining me here on your mat. My name is Sam. I'll be guiding you through today's Hatha Yoga practice, which will be themed around the idea of connection, and in the physical body will be themed around the connection between the hamstrings and the hips. So we'll be focusing mostly on hamstring work, but we'll be moving about the mat. If you want to have a mantra for today's practice, it could be just around that idea of connection, or it could be something longer, like I am one with every being on the earth, connected by the vibration of universal energy, getting into the spiritual roots of Hatha Yoga. Anyway, when you're ready, feel free to grab a pillow or a block or prop. If you feel you'll need one during the practice, there's always room to incorporate. We'll be starting on our backs on your mat when you're ready, and I'll meet you there. So we're coming to the mat on our backs. Take your time getting there. Get there how you get there. Once you're there, open up. We'll begin in Shavasana just for an opening meditation. So just palms open toward the ceiling, chest is nice and open. Chin is lifted. You can just let the feet fall apart and just start to notice the physical connection to the mat. Start to feel supported by the earth. Start to quiet the mind, letting go of anything that's not serving you. As we start to create this space for ourselves. As you're dropping in, start to notice the breath. That prana or life force moving in and out of the body. Start to notice how you feel in the physical body, the intellectual body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. Doing a little quiet observation of where you are today without judgment, just noticing. Start to settle into the space that you've created for yourself, letting go of anything that's not serving you. Remember that this practice today is your own. I'm just a guide, but my instructions are just suggestions. I encourage you to be curious, listen to your body, and make this practice your own. So we're going to be thinking about or theming our practice around connection. So you can just make that a one-word mantra. Start to think about and notice the connections in the physical body between the hamstrings and the hips as we move. And then also remember your connection to everything in the universe and the connection of liberation struggles around the world. If you want a longer mantra for today's practice, it might be something like, I am one with every being on earth, connected by a universal vibration. Settle into that and start to frame your perspective for this practice around these ideas. Take a few more quiet moments just to turn inward and reconnect with the breath. Just remember, if you get distracted at any point during the practice or lose focus, try to just come back to the sound of your breath. When you're ready, you can gently bat the eyes open if they were closed. Notice where you are on your mat as you bend each knee, bringing the soles of the feet to the mat, somewhere near the hips. We're going to start with some of our usual hip openers from the lying position, and we'll incorporate a little bit of hamstring work. But first, before we do that, I want to kick up both feet off the mat. Bring your fingertips to the front of both of your knees. Just kind of create a little friction there and let your feet hang down. So gravity's pulling your feet, but you're fully extended at the elbows, just supporting the knees. And we're going to start to lubricate the hip joints just by drawing circles with the knees. So we can do that in any direction, but you can start by bending the elbows, bringing the knees toward the chest, pressing the knees down toward the armpit chest, and then out to the left and right. Go ahead and keep your toes connected or near each other. And just move within that range, however your body allows, just observing what you feel, maybe what you hear. Checking in with the hips, maybe reversing those circles if it feels right. Just starting to move through the range, some of the ranges of motion available to that joint. Take your time here, spend as long as you'd like, moving through those rotations. Or when you're ready, you can just bring your hands to the back of the thighs, just under the knees. We're going to extend through the knees and just roll through the feet and ankles. It's the same thing, you can draw circles with the ankles or the feet, just observing. What do you see? What do you feel? What do you hear? Observing without judgment. You can bend into the knees and continue to do the same thing if you want. Just exploring the full range of motion in the ankle, pressing through all 10 toes, stretching through the feet, and noticing what you feel. When you feel satisfied, you can drop the soles of the feet to the mat. And we'll start with our usual hip opening stretches. We can start by crossing that left ankle over the top of the right knee. You can rest the hands on the body or keep them open to your left and to your right at first, and just press that left knee down toward the mat without the use of your hand, just noticing what's going on there in that external rotation in the left hip, putting your mind's eye there, noticing what you feel. So you might already have anticipated my next cue. Go there when you're ready by kicking up that right foot off the mat and interlacing the fingers behind that right thigh. You can bend into the elbows, pulling that right knee toward the face very gently, not forcing any shape or movement, just noticing what you feel when you try that. And then to create that connection between the hamstrings and the hips here and get that full benefit, we'll extend that right leg fully. So right knee is fully extended. Right ankle is dorsiflexed, heel toward the ceiling, pressing that left elbow into that inner left thigh, just bending into the elbows, pulling your right thigh gently toward the face. If this feels great and you're ready to move on, you can go into the recline pigeon version of this. Just bending into that right knee, interlacing the fingers in front of that right shin. And same thing, just pulling that right shin, right thigh toward the face, very gently, very mindfully, noticing what you feel. Feel free to explore, be curious, and receive that information that the body is sending you via sensations. When you're ready, we'll switch sides, starting by releasing that right foot back to the floor and unraveling the legs. Feel free to let your knees fall to the left and to the right before we switch sides if it feels good. And when you're ready, we'll cross that right ankle over the left knee and once again start by just pressing that right knee open toward the floor. Hands can rest on the body or open next to you. And I skipped this step by accident on the first side, but you can also just gently use your right fingertips to press into the right thigh here before moving on and kicking up that left foot. Just remember, if you're using your hands, you're not forcing anything, you're not applying too much pressure, you're just noticing what you feel and where, and honoring where your body is today. When you feel good about it, you know what to do. Kick that left foot up off the floor, interlace the fingers behind the left thigh. Maybe press that right elbow into the inner right thigh. Bend into both elbows and just pull that left thigh, left knee toward the face, very gently. Checking in with that external rotation in the right hip. Feel free to include that hamstring connection by extending fully through that left knee. Dorsiflexing the left foot, so sending the left heel toward the ceiling. Toes toward your face or toward your shin. And feeling that nice long line of energy from your left heel all the way through the hip. And then feel free to take it into a reclined pigeon if you'd like, or stay here or in any variation as long as you'd like. You can try bending into that left knee, interlacing the fingers in front of the left shin. Same thing. Pressing that right elbow into the right thigh. Pulling the shoulders down toward the mat. Maybe rocking gently side to side or taking some other variation that we've already gone through. So remember, these opening hip stretches are super simple, stuff you can do every day to mitigate hip pain or tightness. Even if you just do them for 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, it can help a lot. All right, when you're satisfied there, go ahead and release that left foot to the mat, unravel the right leg. You can let your knees fall left to right if it feels good. Otherwise, we're gonna move up to sitting. You can get there however you get there. I'm gonna turn to face you, but you can stay where you are as long as you can see me. And we are going to set up in a 90-90 seat. So 90 degrees of flexion inside of both knees. We'll have one shin directly in front, kind of parallel to your torso. Your other thigh should be directly in line with your hip, and your other knee should also be open to 90 degrees. So this is the 90-90. It is not a yoga pose, but it's a really great hip opener for both internal and external rotation in both hips. So you can stay seated here, just planting your fingertips on the mat, finding that nice long spine, rolling your shoulders back, checking in with the breath. You can also incorporate gentle dynamic movement here by maybe bringing the fingertips in line with that shin or somewhere near there. Bending into the elbows and folding forward over that front shin. You'll feel an increase in pressure in that left hip. Just put your mind's eye there. Notice what you feel and where. And I just want to caution, if you are incorporating this dynamic movement, you're never bouncing or throwing your body around. It's always with control, being mindful of your range of motion today, your flexibility today, which is different every day. So take your time there. Feel free to explore wherever you are. If you are just in that upright seat, that's totally fine. This is still great for the hips. This is another pose or stretch that you can do every day to help keep those joints supple. All right, so to switch to the other side, we just roll through across the balls of the feet. So I'm going to lift my right knee up, roll all the way around to the reverse position. So I'm facing away from you now. You might be forward or backward on your mat, but wherever you are, check in with your angles. 90 degrees at both knees. Left thigh is in line with the left hip. Find that nice long seated posture, deep breaths. And then maybe incorporate some dynamic movement if it feels right. Or just stay in that static pose, doing some deep breathing. Notice what you feel, remember your mantra, or come back to the breath if you start to get distracted. Notice if one side is very different from the other, that's very normal and okay, just something to observe. Spend as much time as you'd like on this side. Or maybe check back in with that first side. Feel free to move through one to the other, whatever feels right. And then if you're really bendy here, you could also just like come down to the forearms and rest in this fold, or like stacking your fists or stacking a yoga block, whatever feels right. All right, so take your time there. If you want to, next we're going to come into a wide-legged forward fold. This is a yin yoga pose called dragonfly pose. So bring your heels as far apart as is comfortable for you to sit in a strong upright position. Long spine, shoulders open, chest open, shoulders back. All right, so we're gonna hinge at the hips and fold forward, and we're gonna hold here for a little bit. So if you feel coming into this fold that it's way too intense, just bring your heels a little closer together, come back to that nice long spine, and fold forward with the heels closer together. You can grab a pillow or a block to put under your head if you want to. Get nice and long through the spine before you hinge, and as you do, come down onto that pillow or onto that block. I also like to just bring my fingertips to the inside edge of my big toe to prevent that internal rotation there. But you do you. Feel free to explore. Let your body know it's okay to relax. Observe what you're feeling and where without getting overwhelmed. Just notice. Turn inward and reconnect with the breath. If you lose focus or start to get overwhelmed, come back to the sound of the breath. Take a few more quiet cycles of breath wherever you are. When you feel satisfied in this stretch, let's feel that connection between the hip bones and the mat first. And then curl up just a bit. Feel that connection between the tailbone, articulate all the way up through the vertebra. Slowly, gently, mindfully coming all the way up to that long spine that you started with, rolling the shoulders back. Opening up through the chest, taking a nice deep breath, letting something go on your exhale. And then we'll bend into that left knee and bring the sole of the left foot to the inside edge of the right thigh. So we're going to come into head to knee pose, or head toward knee pose, I like to call it. Your head does not need to touch your knee. It's totally fine. We're going to begin by shifting the torso to face that right foot. That foot's flexed toward the ceiling, so toes are toward the ceiling, shin straight, and knee pressing down toward the floor. Roll the shoulders back, get long through the spine, send the palms up and overhead, facing each other, really reaching, getting really long. And then we're going to bend at the, hinge at the hip, sending the hands beyond the feet. The outside edge on the right side, maybe looking under that left elbow, maybe closing your eyes if it feels good. And if your hands are nowhere near that foot, that's okay too. You can just grab on the outside edge of the ankle, or you can open up your palms toward the ceiling on either side of that right shin. Just honor wherever your body is today. Pulling that left hip open, anchoring down through the earth. Pressing that right knee down toward the mat, noticing what you feel and where. And just incorporating some nice deep inhales and exhales. Remember that mantra of connection. Notice how everything in the body is connected. Noticing those nice long lines of energy and sensation across multiple parts of the body. Take your time here to root down and turn inward. Remind your body it's okay to relax. Ground yourself in the sound of your breath. When you feel ready, you can gently release that right foot, open up the palms toward the ceiling on either side of that right ankle. Notice the connection of the hip bones to the mat. Press down through those bones to slowly curl up to sitting. So just as you curl up, you're enjoying the journey, you're noticing, you're receiving those messages from the body. Come all the way up to that nice open posture, nice deep breaths. Notice how you feel before bending into that right knee and taking it to the other side. Extending through that left leg, left knee. Sole of the right foot comes to the inside edge of the left thigh. Checking in with the posture first, pulling that right knee open. Palms face each other, fingertips all the way up toward the ceiling, getting really long. Reaching, reaching, reaching. Imagine reaching beyond that left foot with both hands, and then hinge at the hip and do it. Head toward knee. Pulling that right knee open. Remember, you can also grab on the outside edge of that left ankle, or just hold your left ankle or open up the palms on either side of the left shin if the foot is inaccessible to you. Reconnecting with the breath. Listening to the body and turning inward here. Noticing the connection of sensations in the body. What do you feel and where? Reminding yourself it's okay to relax. Take a few more deep cycles of breath. Just to turn inward and to let something go. When you feel satisfied, you can release the hands to either side of the ankle or shin. Rotate your body toward that ankle or shin. Root down through the hip bones and slowly curl up through the spine. Rolling the shoulders back. Take a nice deep breath just to notice how you feel. And then we'll roll forward onto all fours for tabletop. And we will, of course, definitely be doing some cat-cow. So if you're ready to do that, feel free to go ahead and do it. Otherwise, I'll guide you through. We're going to plant the palms under the shoulders, knees are under the hips. Nice neutral spine, so not exactly straight, but kind of following its natural curvature. Nice long line, so nice and long through the neck. We're going to sync up with the breath here for first our cow pose, followed by cat pose. So on your next big inhale, drop the low ribs down toward the mat, open up through the chest, lift the gaze, and point your tailbone toward the ceiling. This is cow pose. As you exhale, you'll press the palms into the mat, press into the shins and the tops of the feet, arching through the upper back, drawing the low ribs inward toward the spine. Inhale, drop the belly. Nice big breath. Follow your natural breathing rhythm. Exhale, press into the palms. Low ribs come inward to meet the back body. Sync up with your breath, move at your own pace. And then feel free to incorporate any easy organic variation of these two poses that your body is asking you for. So you might want to bend into the elbows and just press the ribs over to the left, downward, over to the right, upward, circulating the ribs. Maybe reverse that. Basically what the goal is to articulate through the vertebra in every way possible. And the spine can move really dynamically, so there's a lot of ways that you can move here that will release potential energy and just feel great. So check it out. Listen to your body. Just like when you're stretching in the morning, You just kind of do what your body asks you to do. So you can do that here too. Take your time there as long as you want. When you feel satisfied, we'll come back through center to that tabletop position, nice neutral spine on all fours. From there, I'm gonna bring my right knee toward the center of the mat. I'm gonna lift my left knee and just draw some big circles toward the back of the mat and then forward. Just once again, lubricating that hip joint, checking in with the hip in some of its ranges of motion. And from here, we're going to bring that left foot to the outside edge of the left hand on your next go around. Once you plant that there, we're going to heel toe that left foot in toward the center of the mat. Doesn't need to be exactly in front of your right knee. It can be in the natural hip alignment, so a few inches over to the left. We're just going to come into a low lunge. So from here you can walk that left foot forward a bit or maybe walk the right foot back. Whatever you need to start to feel that connection through that left hip, that compression in the left hip, and that elongation through the right hip. You can also interlace your fingers and bring them to the top of that left knee. And just sink down deeper into that lunge if it feels good, if it feels right. Not forcing anything, just checking in. Feel free to bring some yoga blocks here to put under your hands if that feels right, or just rest the fingertips on the mat. Right now we're just settling into this pose, noticing what you feel and where. Connecting with the breath, staying nice and long through the spine wherever you are. If your hands aren't already there, go ahead and interlace the fingers on top of that left knee. Come to the upright version of this lunge. We're just going to incorporate a little side body stretch here, so it'll require a little balance. We're going to send both hands up and overhead. And with that left hand, grab the right wrist, pull it up toward the ceiling and over to the left side of the mat. A couple deep inhales and exhales here. Press into that left foot and release the hands back to the floor. Frame that left foot one more time. And from here, we're going to extend through the left knee, bringing the left toes up toward the ceiling. You can press back into the hips to do that. Coming into a runner's stretch here. So feel free to adjust if that right knee needs to go back a bit further. Just come back to the sole of the left foot, walk the right knee back a little bit, and roll back up onto that left heel, left toes toward the ceiling. You should feel a nice long line of energy pretty much from your left heel to your left hip. It's okay if you don't feel that. You might feel something different. That's fine. But if you're looking for that hamstring connection, make a couple adjustments and see what kind of different sensations you get. Connect with some nice deep breaths here. Getting rid of any self-limiting thoughts. Quieting the mind, connecting with the breath. Maybe pulling that left heel in toward that left hip. Take your time here, spend as long as you'd like. I'm going to give a couple more moments for a few more cycles of breath. And when you do feel satisfied with that, we'll meet back in tabletop to begin that sequence on the second side. So when you're ready to come out, we'll bend into that left knee first, coming back onto the sole of that left foot. You can bring the right knee forward a bit if you need to. Heel toe that left foot over to the left side of the mat. Come down on both of the palms and send that left knee back for your tabletop position. Palms under the shoulders, knees under the hips, nice neutral, long spine. And once you get there, we'll start on the right side just by drawing big circles with that right knee, lifting that up off the mat, noticing what you hear, what you feel, what's different on this side from the first side, if anything. And when you're ready, you can plant that right foot somewhere around the outside edge of the right hand. Maybe walking that left knee back a little bit if you need to. And then heel toeing that right foot over to the center of the mat or to underneath that right side chest, coming into that low lunge. So feel free to adjust. If you need to send that left knee back a little further, do that. Just bend into your, or extend it through your right knee a little bit before you do. Set up the hands and feet so that you feel some nice sensations, some pressure in that right hip, elongation in the left. Nice stretch through the glutes. Remember, you can also come into the upright version of this, which we will in just a moment. In the meantime, try to notice what you feel. Put your mind's eye where those sensations are and see if you can articulate to yourself what you feel and where. When you're ready, we'll interlace the fingers and bring them to the top of the right knee. Press up to that upright version, nice long spine. Sink down into that lunge a little deeper if it feels good. Then we'll release the hands, bring them up and overhead to meet each other. And with that right hand, grab the left wrist, pull it up toward the ceiling, and then over to the right side of the mat. Take a couple deep breaths here, notice that connection. Sink down into that right hip. And release the hands when you're ready. Coming back to frame that right foot. We're going to extend through the right knee for our runner's stretch. So again, feel free to adjust your knee and foot placement if you feel you need to. When you're ready, we'll extend through that right knee, pressing back into the hips, rolling the right toes up toward the ceiling. Hands should be somewhere in line with that heel. They can be a little bit closer or on blocks if you need. And we're really deeply connecting with those right side hamstrings in this stretch. So if you do not feel that connection, that's okay, but you might want to adjust your knee and foot placement. Up to you. Reconnect with the breath. Quiet the mind, come back to the sound of the breath if you've lost focus. Remember that mantra of connection. A few more quiet moments just to turn inward here. Stay here as long as you'd like. And when you're ready to come out, bend into that right knee, roll onto the sole of the right foot. You can heel toe that right foot off the right side of the mat. Bring your palm to the inside edge of that right foot and then send it back. So we're coming back into tabletop. From here we're gonna bring the big toes into touch and widen the knees about as wide as your yoga mat, but they can be narrower or wider depending on what you feel when you press your hips back toward your heels. Walk the hands forward, bringing the forehead and the chest down to the mat for extended child's pose. Reconnect with the breath here and this space that you've created for yourself. Take this time just to turn inward and relax. Quiet the mind and find stillness for a few more cycles of breath. Gently bat the eyes open if they're closed. Bring your awareness to the fingertips. Press into the fingertips to lift the forearms off the mat, followed by your forehead. From here, we'll walk the hands in just a bit, just to bring the knees together. We're gonna come into a cobra pose from here. So you can bring the knees in tight together, walk the hands forward, extend through the hips, and then send the hips down toward the mat. Palms are under the shoulders, pressing all the way up for cobra, so opening up through the chest. Lifting the chin, taking a few deep cycles of breath. And from here, we'll curl the toes under, send the hips up high and back for downward dog. Walking the hands up toward the feet, maybe sending the heels toward the mat. If your hamstrings are really tight, your heels are probably not going to touch. Feel free to bend into the knees. It's more important that you have a flat back than heels touching the mat. Take a minute here just to breathe. And then we're going to do one of my favorite transitions. Imagine there's a tightrope in the middle of your mat, that long line, all the way down the mat. We're going to gently walk up that tightrope, one tiny step at a time, till we come into our standing forward fold. So slowly, gently, and mindfully, coming onto the fingertips, walking up that tightrope, walking the feet closer and closer toward the hands, until you come into your standing forward fold. Feet are about hip width apart. If your hands can't stay on the mat here, that's okay. Come up on fingertips or blocks. Bend into the knees a bit if you need to. Otherwise, we're going to try to extend through the knees here. We're hinged at the hips, relaxing through the head, the neck, the shoulders, letting the fingertips just maybe sway across the mat, or you can clasp opposite elbows with opposite hands. Relax through the head and neck, maybe shake out your hair. Or just find stillness. You can also incorporate a little deeper stretch through the backs of the legs in general, just by lifting the toes and sliding your palms underneath each foot. Notice what you feel and where. Pressing the ribs toward the upper thighs. Working toward full extension in the knees. relaxing everything. This is another hamstring stretch that I do every day. Sometimes at random, so if you ever see me doing this, that's what that's about. Take your time where you are, stay there as long as you like. Or you can bring your fingertips back to the mat in front of the toes. And from here we'll just walk the toes over to the left to frame that left foot. Keeping that right foot planted. Notice what you feel and where. Notice how that changes the sensations of the body. You can walk those fingertips over to the right when you're ready. Same situation there, just framing that right foot, noticing how that changes the sensations you feel. Noticing if one side is very different from the other, without judgment, of course. When you're ready, you can walk those fingertips back through center. We're going to incorporate yet another of my favorite transitions. We're going to walk the feet out to the outside edges of the mat, let the toes spill off. Heels are on the outside edges of the mat. And we're just going to come into yogi squat. So bending into the knees, bringing the hips down toward the earth. Elbows come to the inside edges of the knees. Palms come together at the heart. Nice long upright posture. Nice long line from the crown of your head to the tip of your tail. Take this time to reconnect with the breath. Notice what you feel and where without getting overwhelmed. You might be anticipating the transition that's next. From here, we're going to transition into a boat pose on our way back down to our backs, which is where we'll end. So from here, we can start by dropping the hips to the mat, lifting the soles of the feet, and letting the shins hover parallel to the mat for our boat pose, opening the palms up toward the ceiling, or maybe bringing the hands to the backs of the thighs, under the knees if you need to, or maybe extending through the knees. Whatever's in your practice today. When you're ready, just relax, bring those heels down to the mat. We're going to do a little seated forward fold before we finish. So just coming into a little staff pose. Before we fold, let's do a little seated twist. So first of all, palms can come to the outside edges of the hips. Pretty extended through the elbows, nice and open through the chest, shoulders back. Nice long spine is what we're working on here. Once you've got that, you can bring the hands to the outside edge of that left hip. We're just going to sit up, lift, and twist, planting those left fingertips behind you, pulling that left shoulder back. Maybe looking behind you over that left shoulder if it's in your range. And then same thing on the right, nice and gentle like you're moving through water. Planting the right fingertips behind you. Left fingertips are on the outside edge of the right hip. Pulling that right shoulder back and looking over that right shoulder. Bring it back through center when you're ready. Slowly, gently, mindfully. We'll get long through the spine. Bring the palms to face each other in front of the chest. And then send the fingertips all the way up toward the ceiling. Really reaching, getting really long. Same kind of fold situation here. Hinging at the hips, we're going to imagine our hands going beyond the feet and and hopefully bring them there. To grab the outside edges of each foot, bringing your head toward the knees, not pulling with the hands or bending into the elbows. Not forcing the shape, basically. If the feet are not accessible, you can hold the outside edges of the ankles or just open the palms up toward the ceiling on the outside edges of both shins. Whatever feels right. We'll spend a few quiet moments here, so I'm going to stop talking so you can enjoy. If you want to really connect with the hamstrings, press your knees down toward the mat as you do so. When you're ready to come out, you know what to do. I'm going to plant the sits bones, plant the tailbone, slowly articulate through the spine, coming all the way up to sitting, and then we'll go all the way back to where we started in the lying position. You can get there how you get there. Remember, this is your practice, so make it your own. And then feel free to take any other easy organic movement that's calling to you from here. So if you want to get into a happy baby, bringing your hands to the outside edges of the feet once again, opening up the knees toward the ceiling, maybe rolling left to right, maybe extending through the knees there. It doesn't have to look like anything. Just listen to what your body's asking for here before we settle into Shavasana. This is going to be a short closing just because we're short on time here. We're coming up on the hour, but coming into Shavasana, you'll extend through the knees, open up the palms toward the ceiling. Feel free to use a pillow for your head or neck if that feels right. Reconnect with the breath. Reconnect with the sacred space you've created for yourself and all the safety of that. Notice how you feel. Reflect on your mantra. Allow yourself a few more quiet moments just to turn inward and just to be here now. I'm going to bring my palms together to rest gently at the third eye. To do a quick land acknowledgement before closing the practice. Feel free to join me there if you want, or stay where you are in Shavasana, whatever feels right to you. First, I want to recognize that I am instructing this yoga class from unceded Monongahela, Osage, and Erie lands. So we recognize and honor sacrifices of the indigenous people who cared for these lands before us. We also recognize that their struggles for liberation are ongoing and deeply connected to ours, and that there are lots of opportunities for us to support those struggles, those efforts. We also want to recognize that yoga is an ancient spiritual practice coming from the subcontinent of India and Indian culture. So we recognize and honor that cultural heritage. We also recognize that yoga functions as many things for many peoples of the world, including as a community. I thank you so much for being part of my community today. I hope you got something you needed here today, and I hope to see you again soon. Namaste.